Great evening, people of life, light in the darkness. How are you doing this evening? I hope that all is well and safe. As we get into our discussions on why we don't have anything to do with seances, and seances are for what? Only one type of people, and that's the outside people who don't have the inner connection to the spiritual world, to the same connection that we have. They do have a connection, but it's not the same connection we have, the higher connection. They have a spirit connection. That's why I wanted to be sure the way I said it. But the spirit connection that they have is those spirits that are locked down in this realm that we're currently in. Now, anything outside this realm, they cannot connect to. So, and 9 times out of 10, they are responsible, I should say 100%, the ones who utilize the seances, the ones that practice the occult, are pretty much responsible for entrapping most souls and spirits in this realm. So we're going to go over the history of seances. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences with seances. And then we're going to look at a video. Some videos. Let me share my screen. Light Force Network, Society for Enlightenment. History of seance. I don't want to spook anybody out. This is not spooky conversation. This is not a spooky conversation unless you're the perpetrators. Perpetrators, beware. Perpetrators, beware. That's all I can say. You may not want to come in this realm over here and those who have anything to do with the hard death of souls or spirits, and those souls been locked down in this realm and not being able to escape this place, you may not want to watch this. You coming? Come on. Come on. Uh-huh. Hold on a second, family. I'm going to get back into this after I finish here. Hey, welcome, DOD.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
All right, thanks for having me again.
Oh, no problem. Great. It's always great to see you. Come over and spend a little time with us. Okay. Right, we're talking about seances and how we don't necessarily need seances. So we're going to give a little bit of understanding into why our capture people that captured us and the people that have us subjugated, why they needed, we understand that they are quite different than we are. They don't have certain abilities that we, the dark people, the dark golden race have. They don't have the same abilities we have. See, we can communicate inside ourselves with people who passed on. That's if they have made it out of the realm of this planet. Once they make it out of the realm of this planet, they go back into our DNA, our family members, and all those who are connected to us through DNA. But if they get stuck here in the realm, then they have lost their connection to us and their connection to escape, and their souls are pretty much trapped here. And that's where you get a lot of these different entities that people are using seances to speak to.
But what determines whether or not their souls are stuck here or not?
Well, it's their frequency, and majority of them have been murdered by our captors and horrific deaths. So many are stuck here, but then it takes a spiritual person to guide them out of here.
That's what you use the seances for.
Our people out of here easily.
And is that what you use the seances for?
No, that's what Caucasian people have to use. Seance is a left brain activity. It's dealing with something that's outside of us as Black people.
Right, but but the ones that are stuck here, how do we lead them to where they're supposed to go?
By us communicating with them. And we communicate with them more like we can communicate with them in a different way than just doing seances. But we have to be careful with seances. And we have to be careful also with what entities outside of ourselves we deal with. That's what I'm going to say for that. So we really can't, we can do rituals to help them to pass on, like we can do the sage and the chantings. We can do chants and sage and walk through a room or a space and guide them to where they need to go, you know. But we can't really, we don't want to mess with seance with them, you know, because that's like playing a different game, you know, with them. And that's why it's always a tragic ending to seances.
For them, right? Or for us?
Yeah, for them, because we don't play like that with them. But at a distance, you know, if you dealing with, because we would be dealing with something outside of ourselves that we know that we once were connected to, but now they're with other entities in this realm. You know what I'm saying? So you don't know what you're dealing with, really. So They can't hurt us because they're fearful. They're fearful of who we are because we have souls. Now they're fearful of us because of our soul. So basically, but they can still cause havoc in your life, you know. Like for my example in my life, this is a true story now. I was real young. I was about, it had to have been 2 years before I turned 13. So I was about 11 years old. And me and my cousins, we decided to do a seance. So we did the seance, and we've always done seances, but I actually put my mind to it, and we were able to do a successful seance. A successful.
Now, why do you say it was successful?
This one was successful because we put more into it. We were more serious about it, you know. And it was actually our last seance. And I said 2 years before I turned 13, because after that, when we called my grandmother's sister forward in my grandmother's house, right? And bad things started happening at that house. Like my grandmother ended up in a car wreck. And after the car wreck, then she was diagnosed with cancer. Well, her sister passed of cancer. You know, it was in their family background. You know. So dabbling in that just caused heartache for me 2 years later. You know, and you can tell because we felt something different around us. You know, we actually knew it was successful because I remember something happened, and we had the Ouija board too. So yeah, definitely something had happened at that time. So that's why I said for us, we don't need to devil in that, because we know that everything that's outside of us is not necessarily something that we want to mess around with. But what's inside of us is what we want to pull our energy from. Outside of us, it's kind of not good energy because it's a lot of bitterness, a lot of people that died in low frequency, you know, and with their frequencies low, and therefore a lot of misfortunes in your life can happen messing with these seances, because it's not for us, you know. It's not even for them, but they still do it, you know, trying to find resolution for their torture. You know, many of them are tortured by these entities that they have created, you know, because of how they torture people, and haven't realized that when you give bad energy comes back on you. You know what I'm saying?
Now,
So,
where do these people get the idea that they can speak to someone that's passed on? Where did they get that idea from?
because the entities come to them and torture them.
No, but a seance is to do what though?
A seance is to communicate with those spirits that are torturing them.
Right. And so I'm asking, who thought about that? Who thought about?
Well, I'm going to get right into this. It's going to be a nice, informational show tonight. So let's get into the first article I have up, and then we'll get into the videos, okay?
I'm ready.
Let me share my screen. Yeah, let's get into that because this is going to be quite interesting. Can you see that all right?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, this is Light Force Network, Society for Enlightenment, History of the Seance. Okay. Thanks to the literature, movies, and perhaps even actual experience, most people are familiar with the paranormal activities involved in seances. However, the history behind spirit communication through the body of a mortal medium isn't commonly known, and it's probably not a subject your high school history teacher ever mentioned. If you dig deep enough, you'll find enthralling tales of empowered women, skillful tricksters, and one enraged magician, Catherine Carp. The word seance comes from French séance seat, meaning seat, session, from Old French seer, seoir, or something like that. To sit means to sit in French. As in English, the word came to be used specifically for a meeting of people to receive spiritualistic messages. A sense first recorded in English in 1845. You got that much? It was talking about, it was specifically for people to receive spiritualistic messages. See, the Black man and Black woman always receive spiritualistic messages throughout our bodies, within ourselves we receive these things, but a lot of times we don't pay attention to it. Where these people, they want that so much. They want to be able to do that, have the abilities we have.
And so they do these seances to be able to communicate.
Right. Seance is a communication with
because they can't do it. They can't do it inside. You have to do it on the outside.
When they have such a disconnection with their own family members, they're not even connected to that part. You know what I'm saying? So they would love to communicate with their own family members. But what we don't understand, we don't need that. Our communication starts within ourselves. But earlier in French and English, the word had been used for meetings more generally. And even the souls that are here stuck, we can still see and communicate with them if they're attached to us, like a grandmother, a mother, a brother, close relations. If they're trapped here, those are the ones that we really want to kind of guide out of here, to get out of here, figure out a way to release them from this bondage, Part of our human conditioning tells us that we are part of something more than third dimension. We envision God's angels, guides, and others on the other side who sometimes interact in this realm. As we expand our conscious awareness, we seek to hear their messages and make a connection that is far more powerful than that in 3D. It is how we are programmed. Humans have always sought to connect with their creators who exist above this realm. The history of seance communication can be tracked back to the 3rd century. Often, seance was connected to occult practices, so cultural practices. We know that they didn't have culture, so they stole this occult, which we know was culture, which means black culture, basically, or the dark culture, bringing fear to those who attended or heard about them. To many people, the concept of spirits on the other side who wish to communicate seemed impossible, often linked to ceremony, black ceremonial rituals and magic, and of course the trickster. This comes from fear of the unknown. You notice this really sums up the Caucasian races. They have a fear of the unknown. Fear is part of human experiment. Well, for us over here, fear is not a good thing for us to have as a people, but it's been embedded in us environmentally because we've accepted so much of the Caucasian culture. Now, what we call Caucasian culture, it's what they have made. Its polarity is love. As a soul root, we are often ruled by our issues and fears. It was during the 1800s that the seance became popular, mainly due to the stardom of the Fox sisters, who began a spiritualist movement. Spiritualism is about life after death. The spirit realm, the spiritualism movement began with what Alan Kardec termed topology. Topology is a mode of spirit communication in which spirits lift and tilt a table during a seance to produce rapping sounds. In organized seances, a number of people would sit around a table, hold hands, concentrate, and ask questions of the spirits. The spirits would then answer their questions through a series of raps or knocks, similar to someone knocking on a door. In order to question the spirit, sometimes a simple yes or no would be indicated by a prescribed number of knocks. And another method, called alphabetical topology, letters of the alphabet were recited, and when the letter that the spirit wanted to draw attention to was called a rap, could be heard, thus spelling out words, sentences, and so on. Using this method, it was possible to hold lengthy, detailed conversations with mysterious entities responsible for spirit rapping.
So who are those two people supposed to be?
Those are the twins they were talking about earlier on, right here. I'm trying to see. Okay, let me see. Yeah, those are. Did you hear me when I was reading about the twins?
Yeah, they don't look much like twins, though.
They don't, do they? Yeah, Max.
I like Baird, bro.
Maybe they said two sisters or something. I don't know. Okay, the first recorded already read that right. Okay, down here it's going to tell you about them. Spirit rapping began in America in 1848 with the playful efforts of Margaretta and Kate Fox to communicate with the spirits of the dead. Much of their astonishment, they succeeded in establishing a ghostly dialogue with the spirit of Charles B. Rosman. So they went and sought a spirit to speak to. That's what they did. And
So it wasn't even a family member.
yeah, that's them right there. But they
Right,
always
but I'm
do.
saying that the spirit that they spoke with wasn't even a family member.
It wasn't. It wasn't. Using rapping noises as its means of communication, Haynes' spirit conveyed the message that he had been killed and buried in the basement of their home. When bones were found in their basement, what had begun as innocent fun became a sensation. From these humble beginnings, what came to be known as Spiritualism Movement took root and grew to international proportions. As a result of their spiritualistic activities, the Fox sisters were condemned and lived in constant danger. See, you don't want to do that. They were attacked by religious fanatics in their community and besieged by angry mobs. Several times they were also exploited and eventually betrayed by their own sister Leah, who was said to have been the beneficiary of most of the donations collected from those who came to the Fox sisters for spiritual counseling. As the spiritualism movement got underway in America and Europe, the strange but well documented manifestation of the spirit communication, such as spirit rapping and seance channeling, were regarded as weird and unexplainable events. The great majority of Americans and Europeans viewed it as nothing more than a bizarre form of entertainment. But those who took the spirit communication seriously, however, it quickly became apparent that something more was happening. Many of the messages received from the spirits were discovered to be quite accurate. In addition to the messages, other phenomena were being witnessed and verified by many of the most credible individuals in American and European society.
So according to this, those two women were the first to do a seance in
It's,
America.
yeah, in America, yeah. By 1854, spirit-directed paranormal phenomena had reached a level of interdimensional invasion, leading spiritualists in the United States decided that it was time to undertake an official investigation. The erudite and well-respected spiritualists petitioned Congress to appoint a scientific commission to investigate the perplexing paranormal phenomena that had been witnessed by many people. The petition, entitled A Memorial, described the phenomenon produced by the spirits in great detail. The object of the investigation was described as in the petition as an occult force exhibited in sliding, raising, arresting, holding, suspending, and otherwise disturbing numerous ponderable bodies, apparently in direct opposition of the acknowledged laws of matter and altogether transcending the accredited powers of the human mind. Lights of various forms and colors and of different degrees of intensity which appear in dark rooms where no substances exist, which are liable to develop a chemical action or a phosphorescent illumination. And in the absence of all the means and instruments whereby electricity is generated or combustion produced. Sound, which are extremely frequent in their occurrence, widely diversified in their character, and more or less signified in their import. How the functions of the human body and mind are often and strangely influenced in what appear to be a certain abnormal states of the system, and by causes which are neither adequately defined nor understood. This document was delivered by the former governor of Wisconsin, Nathaniel Talmadge, or to Senator James Shields, to be presented before Congress. Much to the consternation of the petitioners, Shields scorned the spiritualists by saying, "The prevalence of this delusion at the age of the world among any considerable portion of our citizens must originate, in my opinion, in defective system of education or in partial derangement of the mental faculties produced by a diseased condition of the physical organization. I cannot, therefore, believe that it prevails to the extent indicated in this petition." Okay. Hold on. Stop there. Any questions, DOD?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I just got a phone and got kicked off, but it's a trip, like Baron, and I'm not lying to you. I got a phone call talking about, and it was a recording talking about change now, repent. It was some kind of
Message?
no, well, it was some kind of recording, and
Yeah.
it said something about repent, and but it's weird, and it kicked me off.
Oh, no.
And
But
it got me thinking about what we're doing here.
what we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't believe in no, I don't believe in no Jesus, no that. So.
Huh? You don't believe in what you said?
What I'm gonna do, let me drop off right quick because you're coming in real low. I'm gonna drop off and I'll come right back up.
Okay, that's good.
All right. Okay.
Is that better?
Oh man, much better. But it does that whenever a phone call comes in, it'll kick me off, and then the audio isn't as good.
Yeah, you were low then. Yeah. It must have took over your I think what happened was it interfered with the call. It happens to me when what am I doing? Sometimes I'm on my phone and I'm trying to listen to a video, right? And then I get a call and that call, it dominates what you were doing before. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
it interferes with the sound. But hold on a second. That was a long video too, DOD.
And how long was it? 7-8 minutes.
Yeah, I should have checked it. Okay.
No, no problem. I didn't mind watching it.
Yeah, we're gonna get into the other. I thought that was gonna be a short video, but it ended up being long. I don't know whichever happened first. Let's share the screen so we can get into the next video. I'm not gonna let this video go too long because we already got pretty much the idea. But Edgar Casey, who had a huge organization here and still has the organization here in Virginia, and I think in Virginia Beach, Virginia. He's going to talk a little bit about him. Okay. Let me do it like this. Here we go. History. Let's see how this video is.
Welcome to my channel. This is Lady Alexandra, and I hope you're doing well. A seance is a meeting of people trying to receive spiritualistic messages. At the core of the practice of holding a seance are two beliefs. First, that there exists a spiritual world, or afterlife, and second, that it is possible to contact the spirits in this world through a medium. Seances are frequently attended by people who wish to contact a loved one that has recently died. For many, their experiences at a seance provide comforting knowledge that their loved ones have not ceased to exist, that there is an afterlife, and there is a possibility of being reunited with those who have been lost. Most seances are conducted in dimly lit rooms, with 3 or more people seated around a table. The seance is led by the medium, who attempts to lead the group into communication with the spirit world. Mediums may go into a trance-like state in an attempt to allow a spirit to take control of their body and speak through them, a process known as channeling. The most commonly reported physical manifestations of channeling are an unusual vocal pattern or uncharacteristic physical behavior by the medium. In addition to channeling, a medium may ask spirits to answer questions with a sign. For example, rap once for yes, twice for no. Invocations of positive energy may be made at the beginning of a seance. Unbelievers and skeptics are often discouraged from participating because of the negative effect their energy has on the success of a session. During the 19th century, seances were extremely popular. Participants might observe a cold breeze on their faces, the tilting of a table, the materialization of items from thin air, or musical instruments playing mysteriously. Hands or figures would appear to float, and participants might feel the touch of a cold hand. Some mediums would use automatic writing, the use of planchettes to spell out messages on a Ouija board, spirit slates, or the impression of psychic images onto photographic plates that had been kept in sealed enclosures. Seances, as they are known today, did not become popular until the mid-19th century, however. The Fox family suffered through a week or so of unusual bangs, raps, and other noises during the night. Intent on finding the source of the noises,
Remember them too?
the youngest daughter, Kate,
Yeah,
began to ask a series
the
of
Fox
questions,
sisters.
Yeah.
requesting a specific number of raps as an answer.
Gonna be a quiz.
From these conversations, it was determined that the cause of the noises was the spirit of a murdered peddler. Neighbors were brought in to observe the phenomenon, and the girls soon became locally famous. The Fox family was plagued with visitors who were anxious to see the girls contact the spiritual world. And because of the resulting controversy, the family was asked to leave the congregation of their church. Cora Laudencia Veronica Scott was another
pause
of
this
the
real
best-known
quick.
mediums.
Because I forgot to do the scroll so that we won't get in trouble. You know what I'm saying?
And then what you should also do is every couple of 2 or 3 minutes, pause it and then say it.
Yeah. Okay. I will do that. But it doesn't have commercials, so that's a good thing.
Right. Yeah.
So, well, I pay for my service, so I don't have to worry about commercials.
Right.
So let's get back to it.
The Spiritualism Movement of the last half of the 19th century. Most of her work was done as a trance lecturer, although she also wrote some books whose composition was attributed to spirit guides, rather than her own personality. In early 1852, Cora first exhibited her ability to fall into a trance and write messages and speak in ways unlike herself. Her parents soon began to exhibit her to the surrounding country, and in this way she became part of the network of trance lectures that characterized this.
And we as Black people, the Black man and Black woman, we would never need a psychic or a medium to communicate for us. Everything we do, we're nothing like these people, but we tend to take on their mindsets and their thinking. And that's why I have my channel, to pretty much differentiate the difference between us, and to be able to, peg the differences between us and them, and understand that difference, because it's very critical for us to understand that we don't think like they do. Our mind is not like theirs at all. Therefore, having a medium or a psychic does nothing for us, because we can do, a lot of them can be frauds trying to get your money, and I don't like people taking advantage of people, of us, especially us as Black people. I don't go for that, because we have more of the ability on our own to do these things within ourselves without any of the bad activities happening or anything like that. You know what I'm saying?
Have you ever heard of any of us doing it?
Well, we don't know ourselves.
Or seen it? No, but what I'm saying, have you seen videos of us doing it?
Not necessarily, but I'm sure that, as like I was influenced as a child to do it. I thought it was interesting, but of course I have, unbeknownst to me at that time, I have, we're Black people as a whole are witches, right? We got that higher power connection, of the darkness, but it's not witches in the way that they consider it. That's why they made the word witch, but it means something deeper. And Eternal talked about it, and I think I did a video with him and interviewed him, and I expounded upon that. So if you want to catch that interview with Eternal, he breaks down what that really means for us as a people. And it's something important that we need to know and understand. That way we know our full potential and just how powerful we are, and that we don't have to fear anything. I mean it.
The Spiritualist Movement. By the age of 15, she was making public appearances in which she spoke with supernatural eloquence on almost any topic put forward by the audience, all while claiming to be in a trance. Contemporary audiences found the spectacle itself incredible. A very young and pretty girl declaiming with authority on esoteric subjects. It was enough to convince many people that she was indeed a channel for spirits. Edgar Cayce allegedly possessed the ability to answer questions on subjects as varied as healing, reincarnation, Atlantis, and future events while in a trance. These answers came to be known as life readings of the entity, and were usually delivered to individuals while Cayce was hypnotized. Cayce's methods involved lying down and entering into a sleep state, usually at the request of a subject who was seeking help with health or other personal problems. Subjects would not normally be present, and their questions would be given to Cayce, who would then proceed with the reading. Initial readings dealt primarily with the physical health of the individual. Later readings might be given on past lives, business advice, dream interpretation, and mental or spiritual help. When out of the trance, Casey would not remember what he had said during the reading. The unconscious mind, he said, has access to information that the conscious mind does not. Thank you for watching my video. This has been a brief overview of the history of the seance.
And they can be possessed by other entities where we can't, because we have a soul. They are empty vessels. So you get that?
And so because they're empty vessels, others, those evil entities or whatever can enter them.
Exactly.
Possess them.
Yes, exactly. Let me go on to the next video. I might have to, I think I may go back to where I was so I can see. Okay. I think I wanted to go over. I think I did that. Yeah, that's statistic. I'm trying to see which one would be beneficial for us to do, or should we just... Okay, we'll do this one. This is interesting. We'll do this one. It's called Science in the Seance. We'll do that one. Is it going to let me in? Okay, it's 4 parts to this one. But we're going to do this because it's all about science. And we're science. We're the knowledge. We are it. They made cell phones, computers, all the gadgets are made from what we are, black men and black women. But yet we don't, a lot of us don't know that. We're science. We're electricity. We are the all in all. A portion of it that wanted to experience its own creation. And voila, here we are. Okay, let's get into this next video. This should be quite interesting. Science and
In 1848, just 4 years after the electric telegraph sent the first Morse code message with tap, 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 American teenagers Kate and Maggie Fox claimed that they were receiving messages from the dead with rap, rap, rap. Their belief that the human personality continues to exist after death and has the power to communicate led to the birth of a new religion, spiritualism.
I have a lady in the spirit world, okay? It's a mother lady in the spirit world. She's really coming through. And she's talking to me about the 17th.
My mother passed away on the 7th.
Oh.
Today, there are hundreds of thousands of believers throughout the world. Many turn to spiritualism in the hope of receiving a message from the next world.
See, this is how you can tell that what I'm saying about the Caucasian is a fact and it's true. They have no connection. So they play around with what entities that are stuck in this realm, that they, by their nature, what they are here for is to pull your energy down and feed off of us. I'm going to get into energy tomorrow, vampires. But what they are here for is to still kill and destroy. So it's their nature to do this, so they don't even notice it. It's just their conscious nature, unconscious nature, I guess. So they can never understand or understand the concept of I keep losing it every time. As much as I've been speaking, I always lose when it comes to what they call karma or what goes around comes around, and then I'd say, but I like it said best in the other way, and I tend to forget. For every consequence, for every action, there's a reaction. Okay, they can't grasp that, so they don't recognize that for every person they murder, that negative energy will haunt their whole seed of people for generations and generations and generations and generations. Nothing good could ever come from what they do. If they call the living that we have here good, which it isn't, in reality it's not. It's just a lockdown. So if they call what they, having to benefit from slavery is not really a benefit. It's not a benefit because it's a downfall for them. Everything's a downfall, but somehow they make it look like it's a benefit. You see what I'm saying? Everything for whatever negative energy you give, negative energy comes back. You see what I'm saying? So because they are murderous people and torturous people and bloodthirst people, that is what happens, the consequences that they suffer. But they can't ever get that.
Yet, the 150-year history of
their need to
spiritualism
survive
reveals a curious and surprising relationship with the telecommunications that shape this world.
There goes the Fox sisters.
The humble cottage where spiritualism began was in Hyattsville, a rural district of New York State. Not long after the Fox family moved in, the house began to echo with mysterious knocks and vibrations.
One night, the family all went to bed early and these strange sounds began. And one of the children, Kate Fox, who was about 11 years old, said to the sounds, started to talk to these sounds and said, "Now do this just as I do." And she snapped her fingers, and the sounds imitated the sounds that the child made.
Kate and her sister Maggie established a simple yes-no code and questioned the sound as if it were a person.
And the story that the sounds told was that it was the spirit of a murdered peddler and it had been buried in the basement.
As word of the rappings spread through the community, the girls were called upon to repeat their performance to ever-increasing audiences and ever-increasing scrutiny. Yet even the most hardened skeptic failed to find a rational explanation for the knocking. It was decided that Kate and Maggie were either marvelous hoaxers or they were communicating with the spirit world. When Kate and Maggie Fox claimed that they could talk to the dead, the world was changing rapidly. Science was challenging old certainties.
The second half of the 19th century witnesses enormous changes in the way science is practiced, scientific claims, technological development. So many new inventions are changing the boundaries of what is possible. Cameras, trains, telegraphs, changing the way people do things. They're changing how people relate to each other. So the Transatlantic Telegraph enables people to talk across the Atlantic. An enormous gulf has been breached here.
There was so much that was new. It almost seemed like anything was possible. If people could communicate over the telegraph, why couldn't this world and the next world communicate? And I think that what was happening actually gave Kate and Maggie and the spirits greater legitimacy. People could take them seriously because there were so many miracles apparently happening around them.
Well, when you think about it, electricity allows for those currencies to communicate now, because all they are is what, like Keith always says, we're nothing but electricity, right? DOD, you still there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. We're nothing but electricity, right? So yeah, with the even with the towers, the cell phone towers now, if something wanted to come through that, it's possible that it could, or from another planet as well, another place, out of this realm.
The rappings in the Fox cottage began spiritualism, a religion based on contacting human spirits after death. The communication through raps and knocks mirrored the new technology of the telegraph.
The spiritualists take the telegraph as a symbol of what they're doing. They are bridging the gulf between the living and the dead. They are using some kind of celestial telegraph, as it's called, to communicate with our loved ones who've passed over.
Although belief in life after death was not new, spiritualism's claim that communication with the dead was welcome was revolutionary.
One of the things that's easy for us today, I think, to forget is that prior to the mid-19th century, in general, having a spirit visit you was a genuinely either heretical or terrifying thing to happen. It was evidence either of absolute delusion or of a visit from the devil. And that through help from the spirits,
because of their lack of connection and our not understanding that we're different, our minds are different than theirs, and our experiences are different than theirs, and we're a whole different world than they are. Listening and taking on their ways causes us to fear, where we don't have anything to fear. Only they have, because they're outdoor people, outside people. They a lot of times committed these atrocities, and they too are low frequency energy beings, so they dwell in the same place with these entities. So when we take on their understanding of something, it does us no justice. It just, we're in that thought process that they have.
for sheer charisma, charm, and magnetism. Kate and Maggie really helped popularize a notion that said the spirits are benign, the afterlife is benign. And that was a pretty radical notion.
Anybody who, like the Fox sisters, believed they could link this world with the next by contacting the spirits became known as a medium.
The Fox sisters were the catalyst that opened up this whole idea of people on the other side coming through, and they dropped something into the consciousness of the world at that time, which opened a door for other people who were having mediumistic episodes in their life. I call it living in a thin place, who could walk between two worlds. And that's basically what a medium is.
Many spiritualists just consider mediums to be just another form of technology. Mediums are actually organic telegraphic apparatus who are at the ends of a kind of spiritual telegraph line. Mediums are actually compared to photographic plates. They work in the dark, they're very sensitive to certain forms of light or vibration.
An epidemic of rappings broke out all over the United States as hundreds of men, women, and children from all walks of life claimed that they too were mediums.
The career in mediumship is actually a good way forward. It's a way into stardom. You get seen by society, and you get noticed by people who are far above you in the social sphere. You get noticed by scientists, by famous men of letters and journalists. This is quite a breach of a very important social class barrier.
In the second half of the 19th century, there were mass migrations from Europe to America and westwards across America. Spiritualism apparently allowed these people to maintain contact with their roots.
People were really on the move. They were not tied to church and kin in the same way that they used to be. If somebody died and you had just moved to a new community, who was there to support you? So essentially what you had was, as people moved, they established a kind of new family of the dead, since they no longer had their extended families close by them.
Spiritualism provided answers to questions about the afterlife in a way that the established religions were failing to do.
The foundations of traditional religion were being undermined, in part by scientific discoveries, geology that was questioning the very age and origin of the earth and its people. And so even if people used to be really scared, are still today, of heaven and hell, at least there was some sense that you understood what the afterlife was supposed to be like. Now, people were dying, but the whole notion of an afterlife was called into question. Who knew? What if there was just the great void? And what began to happen with spiritualism was that you began to get back a very comforting vision of the afterlife. There was no hell. So spiritualism, at one and the same time, did away with hell, and it did away with the notion of the great void.
Spiritualism is giving people permission to look into an unseen world without going through the doctrine of any religion. It's something you can do personally, and you don't need to go practicing anywhere. It can happen within your own being. So I think spiritualism itself, the idea of it, takes away from your structured religions.
Direct contact with the spirits offered certainty in a rapidly changing and uncertain world. In 1852, just 4 years after the first raps at Hydesville, spiritualism arrived in Britain. The movement quickly gained a strong following among the miners and mill workers of the industrial North. One of its most powerful advocates was the medium Emma Harding Britten.
Emma Harding Britten had been over in America on a lecture tour and had come across the Fox sisters. When she came back, she gave talks, people became interested and formed groups. And my great-grandmother was one of the people who founded the church in Huddersfield.
But these early groups were not popular with everybody. The Church of England accused the spiritualists of calling up the dead, a practice forbidden under the Witchcraft Act of 1735. The Church's attitude prompted open hostility from some of the press and the public.
My great-grandmother used to have to carry this card, you had to present it to get in because people were trying to disrupt them. Well, it was a new thought with spiritualism. And of course...
And they always think that you're pulling somebody from their grave. They've already left that body. So digging people in a grave was never our cultural way of doing things. Because we don't have that mind, that thinking that somebody's going to come up out of the body and go back into the body. They don't stay. Your energy now, frequency. So you're not going to stay in that body. Once that body is gone, it's gone. I mean, there's no need to really have it anymore. But according to the Caucasian, they really think that that person's spirit stays with that body. Evidently.
People are always frightened of what they don't understand. And they were very much against it. I mean, they had things like stones thrown at the windows of people who were interested in spiritualism.
Verbal and physical attacks did not prevent the movement gaining ground. People from every level of Victorian society flocked to dimly lit parlours where mediums invited the spirits to communicate. These events were known as seances. In addition to knocks and raps, the presence of the spirits was indicated by other physical phenomena. Spirit messages were spelled out using lettered cards and slates. Tambourines shook, and voices muttered in the dark.
The problem with the early seance room was that it led itself to skullduggery. There was always the charlatans lurking in the background. And for every genuine medium in those days, I'm sure there was a good 4 or 5 who were not. So there was a lot of that stuff, I'm sure, staged.
People often...
You see, people take advantage of people because they know that this is not a real thing. Dealing with, it's a thing that they really want, that connection. And when they do get the connection, it's a bad experience because they don't realize they're messing with entrapped souls. They're not messing with their loved ones. They're messing with something else because they did sinister things. Sinister things are happening. You know what I'm saying?
I think of 19th century spiritualists as just hopelessly naive. And what people forget is that a lot of the people who were really interested in this right from the start were doctors, lawyers, scientists, individuals who were used to questioning everything. These were people who went and saw and believed, and they were not naive. It was an age of science, after all.
The most sensational spiritualist phenomenon of the 1850s was table turning. The seance goers laid their hands on the table, and it would begin to move. It would rock. It would turn. And it would spin across the floor.
Table turning became such a craze because it was spectacular. It was, we're talking about times before television and all the other distractions we have today.
The people doing it believed the table was turning without their volition. It was turning by some strange force. Some people thought this force was spirits of the dead. Some people thought it was the devil. Other people thought it was sheer trickery.
To Victorian England, only science could establish the truth. The most famous experimental scientist of the day was Michael Faraday.
Let me see where the other one is. Okay. 1 of 4. It's a shame you have to scroll all the way down to get part 2.
The press and the public bombarded him with requests.
Oh, he left.
requests to investigate. A pioneer in the field of electrical forces and a committed Christian, Faraday was deeply skeptical of all spiritualist phenomena. After attending 2 seances, he set to work in his laboratory to devise a scientific experiment to see if there was a rational explanation for the movement of the tables.
Faraday approaches table turning as a problem in the physical forces, and for this he builds a machine to distinguish between bogus and real forces. It consists of 2 boards separated by glass rollers that enable a rolling motion between the 2 surfaces. The indicators magnify any horizontal force that may be exerted, even when you're pressing down. So with this instrument, Faraday wants to show that however likely the table turners rest their hands on this instrument, there's always some motion left and right of the indicator, indicating that there's always some horizontal force.
In a letter to the Times in 1853, Faraday dismissed any supernatural cause as nonsense. Many table turners scoffed at Faraday's findings. They couldn't see how subconscious horizontal pressure could account for the dramatic phenomena they were experiencing. Yet the verdict of science prevailed and the craze of table turning waned. In 1863, Punch magazine caricatured the plight of out-of-work mediums. When the medium Daniel Dunglass Hume burst onto the London scene, the phenomena he produced put spiritualism firmly back in the headlines. Spiritualists still consider him to be one of the most spectacular mediums of all time. At a London Society séance in 1868, Hume appeared not merely to defy the laws of physics, but to dispense with them altogether. Witnesses claimed that he levitated out of one window and back through another.
Daniel Dunglass Hume was, I think it's safe to say that he was the most powerful medium to ever strike the United States and Europe, not just London, but Europe. And every single paranormal physical phenomenon that could happen happened to Daniel. And one must remember that when Daniel was demonstrating, it was in rooms very often as well lit as this one. He did not demonstrate in the dark, so people could see exactly what was going on.
Hume attributed his powers to the spirits. Skeptics claimed he was just a skilled hypnotist, exploiting the heightened sensitivities of his eager audience. How could science find the truth?
When visitors turn up to the seance, they've been told that a state of passivity, of open-mindedness, is actually what's needed to see the things they've turned up to see in the first place. So if they're very critical, if they're objectionable, they may not see these wonderful things. They may not be able to contact the spirit world in the first place. But of course, this doesn't lend itself to the canons of scientific practice. You've got to be critical. You've got to be on your guard. And these are not the things that make for good seances. So this is why it's very difficult to work out what a science of spiritualism can be.
The eminent chemist William Crookes believed he could marry science and the seance. Famed for discovering the new element thallium, he wrote,
"New forces must be found, or mankind must remain ignorant of the mysteries of the universe."
Unlike Faraday, he was eager to discover a psychic force. If he succeeded, it would be one of the most important discoveries of the age. First, he devised a simple test to prove that Hume was not just a clever conjurer.
Sir William Crookes bought this accordion off the shelf and still plays. And he built with his colleagues a wire mesh cage so he could see the accordion inside. And Hume put his hand over the lid of the cage, it was padlocked, lifted it up and down, and the accordion played. And Hume's surname was spelled Huame, and it was terribly appropriate because the accordion played Home Sweet Home.
For Crookes, this test ruled out the possibility of sleight of hand and hypnosis, and opened up the possibility that Hume was the conduit for psychic forces. He now needed technology that could detect the presence of invisible forces. Crookes had invented an instrument called a radiometer. It clearly demonstrated that light could move physical objects within a vacuum. The radiometer also responded to the presence of mediums. Crookes now needed an objective means of measuring and recording these invisible forces.
Now, one instrument that he uses to do this is a self-registering instrument. It can be put to one side during a seance, it can be left running, and there might be a display of a force.
When D.D. Hume appeared to move a lever without touching it, the machine recorded a result.
There was a curve representing the ebb and flow of this strange force that was apparently coming out of D.D. Hume, and that in other places was producing such fantastic phenomena as tables levitating and D.D. Hume himself rising above the level of the dining rooms. Crookes says, here's an instrument that D.D. Hume couldn't possibly mesmerize because it's not a living being. How can you hypnotize an instrument? So Crookes reckons he's got the traces of a psychic force in operation.
When he sent these findings to the Royal Society for publication, they rejected them, dismissing his subject, his theories, and his conclusions as unscientific. Undeterred by this snub from the scientific establishment, Crookes published his work in his own journal, the Journal of Science, and went in search of more conclusive evidence of psychic forces. He turned his attention to a materialization medium who claimed she could use psychic forces not to move physical objects, as Hume had done, but to create them. And so this time, Crookes used photography to document his findings. The medium was a young girl called Florence Cook, and her seances were theatrical and daring. Florence would retreat through curtains into an empty cabinet that appeared to have no other way in or out. The lights would be lowered and she would go into a trance. Moments later, a fully formed apparition would emerge from behind the curtains, apparently leaving the entranced Florence in the cabinet.
This incredible phenomenon is a white-clad woman who can speak, walks, she even has a lisp. And she walks through the curtain and walks around the seance. She touches the sitters, she plays the piano, she jokes, she laughs. She says that she is Katie King, the daughter of a 17th century buccaneer called Henry Owen Morgan.
Florence, like other mediums of the time, allowed herself and the seance room to be searched for hidden props.
This was a time when it was considered absolutely risque even to show an ankle. And these were girls who had so-called investigators touching them, holding their bodies. You also had the girls taken aside and strip searched, which was quite extraordinary. And I've often thought that they were either enormously ambitious to allow it to happen, or they had some real conviction that what they were doing was conveying a message that needed to be told.
Crookes claimed that his investigations and photographs proved that Katie King was a genuine spirit form, and not Florence Cook or an accomplice dressed up. Skeptics claimed that his scientific judgment had been impaired by an infatuation with Florence. Fearful for his reputation, Crookes returned to his lab. His skills as a scientist failed to solve the ever-widening mysteries of the seance. Yet his work with the radiometer led to the development of the cathode ray tube that lies at the heart of television technology. William Crookes was the first in a long line of eminent Victorians whose quest to marry science and spiritualism led to revolutionary advances in modern telecommunications.
You might get a terrible shock. You might be killed. Jenkins, do it.
In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell's attempts to improve the telegraph led to the invention of the telephone. But he had even greater ambitions.
Alexander Graham Bell was very interested in spirit communication through ordinary mediums, but wanted to develop a device that would also enable people to talk to the next world electronically. He made a pact with his younger brother that whichever one died first would communicate and preferably use this superior method. His brother died much younger than him, but sadly Bell never succeeded in producing this telephone to the next world, so he wasn't able to make that contact.
Are you there? Oh.
In 1877, Thomas Edison produced the phonograph.
Edison, and the rebar that carry one, the lamb was sure to die.
He believed that if he could create a machine that could record the vibrations of the human voice on wax, he might one day be able to construct a device that could record the voices of the dead.
Edison was of the mind that if you can display it by this means, then I'm prepared to believe in it. It's just that Edison didn't accept almost the authority of the spiritualistic instruments. He didn't believe that mediums were completely credible mediators of subtle forces. He needed to kind of embody it in instruments that he had built or instruments that he controlled. And for him, that would constitute proof of the afterlife.
Towards the end of his life, Edison claimed,
"It is possible to construct an apparatus so delicate that if there are personalities in another existence who wish to get in touch with us, this apparatus will at least give them a better opportunity."
Plans and prototypes for this machine do not survive, but we know that Edison named it the Spirit Finder. By the 1880s, the scientific quest.
And today, we can just go to our cell phones and there's apps that will do white noise and will allow you to speak to these entities. But that's the whole thing with this video, is for us to not deal in that. We are naturally spiritual people. Therefore, we are to do the work of guiding those souls that we know. That's why it's important for us to, as people, to understand the history that was done to us so that we can go back and release all our people from this bondage of afterlife because of a lot of tragic deaths. So we know about various different hangings. So it would behoove us to go to these places and free these people, so that we're spiritualists in that way, because it's our nature, and dealing with it. But I'm all about them giving that work to these Caucasians though, before. But many times it doesn't end up to being like that. Like I went to one house that had a slave still there, a male slave, and he just lives like he doesn't know that he's passed on. So he's just still in existence there in a modern day world at that house. But I'm hoping that maybe this fall man, Eternal, could perhaps go there and do some spiritual work. And I would like to do that spiritual work other places, but I really will highly recommend our people to work on releasing our people who died tragically in this place and never had the opportunity to live out their purpose due to these different various atrocities they've endured.
To understand the power of invisible forces was attracting more and more men of position and influence. Physicists, theologians, scholars, psychologists, even politicians who considered spiritualist phenomena worthy of serious intellectual inquiry. In 1882, a leading Cambridge academic called Frederick Myers helped to found the Society for Psychical Research. Myers had been inspired by Crookes' groundbreaking work on D.D. Hume, and the Society met regularly at his home, Beckhampton House.
Myers was incredibly interested in the problem of the survival of the soul following bodily death. Myers was surrounded by a group of very powerful intellectuals, and these people picked up Crookes' work, were absolutely convinced that Crookes was onto something here. They thought, we're going to do something with this. We believe that there can be a scientific study of psychic forces, of spiritualism and related phenomena. And it's with this in mind that they began to found the Society for Psychical Research.
The press.
Now I'm going to go to part 3.
This is the room in Leckhampton House. Where some of the most important seances in Victorian Britain took place. This was a place where some spectacular spiritualistic phenomena were witnessed. They were produced by an Italian woman, Eusapia Palladino. As they sat around this table in the gloom, they witnessed strange things going on. They were pinched on their shoulders, they were prodded by fingers, and they saw this enormous curtain billow out. They seemed to be produced by some kind of force, and one person around this table was Oliver Lodge.
Oliver Lodge was one of the greatest physicists of the age. A pioneer of radio, he was renowned for his work on the way that electricity and magnetism pass through space. Lodge was a complex mix of scientist, academic, and spiritualist.
He was interested in how imponderable things can act at a distance. And it's precisely this that gives value to his interest in the kinds of things that Eusapia Palladino is doing.
I have one magnet in this piece of wood and another one above it. One will float on the other. That bit of steel is floating in empty space, in vacuum. The air has nothing to do with it. It's resting on a cushion of vacuums. Well, that shows that empty space can support things. We call it magnetism. Wow.
He's increasingly trying to work out ways of marrying his physics with his work in psychical research. His key tool for this is the ether of space, whose properties he thinks are so extraordinary that there's no reason why they shouldn't have some kind of psychic function. Maybe the ether is where we go to after we die.
There is a great deal of evidence. That evidence has to be criticized. But if the result is that personalities continue to exist, then they must have a physical vehicle for that existence, and that vehicle, I believe, will be found to be Ether, which is the entity which fills space. And I can't help thinking that if we understood all that happens in the relation between ether and matter, we might begin to understand something more of what life and mind really are.
Sir Oliver Lodge found much personal comfort through mediumship, but he also, as a scientist, analysed everything that was going on and recorded it chronologically as a scientist. That helped his findings at times. It encouraged other people like Marconi and others to look into it. Again, people who are interested in sound and radio and invisible waves that are coming from an unseen place.
Oliver Lodge, like Thomas Edison, predicted that one day a form of spirit radio would allow direct communication with the dead.
The interesting thing about electronic communication, of course, is that electricity retains something of its own mystery. I know we can explain it in simple terms. We have various formulas which can explain what's going on, but the actual energy involved is still somewhat puzzling. And it does seem as if it is something that doesn't obey perhaps very obvious laws. So there is a possibility here then that this is another method which can actually be used in order to set up some kind of communication with people who are deceased.
At the very end of the 19th century, when Guglielmo Marconi was experimenting with the transmission of the first radio signals, he was somewhat taken aback when he started receiving signals.
He came to the conclusion that this may well be from the spirit world, and he spent his last years trying to perfect an electronic device that would establish a permanent contact between this world and the next. We know that he attended many seances and was dedicated to trying to achieve some form of communication with the spirit world in his last years.
Although Marconi never achieved electronic contact with the dead, he pioneered the telecommunications industry that now links the four corners of this world. In the early 20th century, hundreds of spiritualists embraced the new technology of radio. To them, a device that could transmit messages through space without the need for a physical link was simply mirroring the ability of human mediums to link two worlds.
These were minds that were looking already into radio waves. They were looking at how waves could be sent from from a transmitter to a receiver. And I think that mediumship conjured up that image, that here was this invisible wave coming, caught by some type of receiver, and then communicated. So the whole thing actually, to me, just epitomizes the radio. When you see these waves coming in, the medium collecting them and then passing through a communication.
The Great War of 1914-18 brought death on an unprecedented scale. Hundreds of thousands were killed, often leaving no remains for their families to mourn or bury.
A whole generation have been massively bereaved. And the churches, the Church of England and the Protestant churches were not very good about things like prayers for the departed. The Roman Catholics were much better at that. The Church of England seemed to be embarrassed by the departed and embarrassed at prayers for the departed. And that failed, I think, a whole generation.
Desperate for the comfort that the church was failing to provide, thousands of the bereaved turned to spiritualism.
All this death happening, and then you were getting the medium coming up and giving hope to the hopeless, to those who thought they haven't a final word and they haven't found closure. So mediumship was seen at its best then. The work side of it was good. The healing side of it was good, because there was a message of hope coming back to people who otherwise felt hopeless.
Amongst the many who died was Oliver Lodge's son, Raymond. The day after his death, Lodge and his wife...
Okay, you're back. Hold on, I'm doing a copy of it. And also, I might as well show you DOD real quick. Hold on, and then I'll get back to the video. One of the shirts I made. Okay, let me see if I can pull it up here. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Is it too late to cancel this? I don't want to send it. Oh, I can cancel right here. Hold on. I hear you in there. Okay, I'm going to show you real quick. I just wanted to interrupt, since I interrupted that video, I wanted to show you real quick one of my Teespring collections. And you tell me how you share it. Share it, share it, share it. Okay. Where am I at? Right here. Okay. Check it out. What do you think?
I like that.
And Black Facts. Oh, what happened? Oh, okay. It took me off where I was. Hold on. Black Facts trumps lies.
I like that. What size you got him in?
You can get whatever size you want.
Whatever color too?
Yeah, whatever. Well, I'm gonna add more colors.
Okay.
Right now that's white, but I'm gonna add more colors, and you can get it in socks.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You can get it in various different things.
Have you or you been doing in masks?
Yeah, that's a mask right there.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to get more colors.
Yeah, I like that though.
And then I got some more here. Let me see where.
Do you have your Teespring link in your description?
I have to put it. Hold on. I got so many listings here, so going to my different listings. Let me see if they can.
I'm hearing an echo. You hear it?
You hearing an echo from me?
I don't know if it's from me or you. Hold on, I think it's me. Hold on, okay.
Oh.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, this is another one. I am the universe. And I think I made this one in various colors. You can get this one in any color you want, in any size, you see. This is all the color. And let's see here. I have some pretty interesting ones. I am, and then I have I am fire as well. And then this is the one my cousin likes. She likes this. She really likes that. Thinks I did a really good job on this. And I like this one too myself. What do you think about that?
All things balanced. Yeah, that's cool.
I just did everything in there, but I gotta add more colors.
Yeah, I like that.
You can get that. I think I'm gonna order this one so I can show it on my, videos.
Yeah.
Along with the pants, because I like that too. I really like that. That's nice. Huh?
Yeah, that is, yeah.
So I still got more ideas to come. I got a whole list there. So let's finish up our video. Let's finish up the video. We got we're on part 3. We just have part 4 left after the part 3. And it's really getting into the science.
Tried to contact him through a medium and became convinced that they had succeeded.
In 1916, Lodge publishes probably one of his most famous popular works, which is called Raiment, or Life and Death. This is the most important book Lodge publishes on spiritualism, because it speaks to a whole generation who lost people on the Western Front. The book went through 4 editions in the space of just a month, and it embodies Lodge's investigations with a medium who he believes was producing evidence of his son who'd passed over into the spirit world. And in a period of widespread grief, this book gave hope for thousands of people that death isn't the be-all and end-all, that maybe their loved ones have passed over into a better state of being, into the spirit world.
One fervent admirer of Oliver Lodge was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who'd also lost a son in the Great War. Conan Doyle was the creator of the world-famous series of detective novels based on the art of clinical, rational deduction. Yet he, too, was a confirmed spiritualist who devoted the last 20 years of his life to promoting its cause.
People ask me, will I write any more Sherlock Holmes stories? I certainly don't think it's at all probable. As I grow older, the psychic subject always grows in intensity, and then one becomes more earnest upon it, and I should think that my 2 remaining years will probably be devoted much more in that direction than in the direction of literature.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was probably one of the greatest propagandists for spiritualism, and he went around the world lecturing about the evidence for spiritualism. His testimony wasn't only about his own experiences. It was based on the evidence that spiritualism and mediums were providing worldwide, and he wrote an excellent history of spiritualism, which put some of that material together.
This thing is not the foolish thing which is so often represented, but that it really is a great philosophy, and as I think, the basis of all religious improvement in the future of the human race.
Here in the experimental studios, a close-up is being taken of one of the members of the staff. Among the many attracted to spiritualism by the testimony of Conan Doyle was John Logie Baird, the pioneer of television, the transmission of sounds and images through space. In 1926, after visiting a séance, at which he was convinced he'd communicated with the spirit of the late Thomas Edison, Baird wrote,
I have witnessed some very startling phenomena under circumstances which make trickery out of the question. I am convinced that discoveries of far-reaching importance remain waiting along these shadowy and discredited paths.
The vision and sound are on. The station goes on the air.
A mighty maze of mystic magic rays is all about us in the blue. And in sight and sound they trace living pictures out of space to bring a new wonder to you.
The television you're watching now embodies decades of investigation into the puzzles of spiritualist phenomena, invisible forces, and the relationship between mind and matter.
One by one they play their parts in this latest of the arts.
so many of the technologies we now take for granted, like radio waves and television tubes, owe their origins to the protagonists of psychical research, some of the people interested in isolating, detecting, and measuring psychic forces and telepathy, were also some of the pioneers of wonderful new scientific technology. William Crookes' investigations of psychic force and related forces leads to the radiometer. Remember that the heart of a TV set is the cathode ray tube, whose origins come from the radiometer, which he patented in 1875. You've got a camera that's very sensitive to light, that's turning that light into some kind of vibration in the ether, and is then being projected somewhere else. And once you've got the ether there, then you've got a link to Oliver Lodge. The work that Oliver Lodge was doing owes some of its roots to his interest in how the mind can operate across distance. For moments in their careers, these enterprises of science and spiritualism were connected.
That great television to you.
In the interwar period, the influence of spiritualism provoked heated debate within the Church of England. In 1936, the Archbishop of Canterbury commissioned an investigation into the ability of mediums to relay messages from the dead. The report concluded,
It is probable that the hypothesis that these communications proceed in some cases from discarnate spirits is the true one.
The report also rejected the need for scientific evidence to prove spiritualist phenomena, stating,
There are quite clear parallels between the miraculous events recorded in the Gospel and phenomena attested by spiritualists. And we must add that the miracles and the resurrection itself are not capable of scientific verification.
Although leaked to the spiritualist press, the report was not officially published for 40 years.
There is a heck of a lot of parapsychological material in the Bible, and quite a lot of the stuff in the Bible can only properly be understood if you are open to parapsychological insight.
That's right.
Certainly the resurrection appearances are very...
They like that. They like it.
And this video is for educational purposes only.
Yeah, and they lacking that understanding because they're not connected. It goes back to their pineal gland. It just doesn't allow them to reach that height or that level.
Like stories of people being seen by their friends after their death. That's not the whole of the resurrection, but it certainly shows that if we're open to parapsychological possibilities, then we read the Bible in a different way.
That's right. All right. Let me go on to the next video real quick. I guess it's a lot of people live right now, so a lot of my audience has gone over there.
Yeah.
So I'm
being Friday night, I'm sure people are live right now.
Oh yes, and yeah. One more, and then we should close up shop. People can always come back to here and get this information.
Oh yeah, they'll check the replay.
Yeah. So that's cool.
If paranormal phenomena is fundamental to spiritualism, many believers consider the improvement of the human spirit before it leaves this world to be as important as contacting it afterwards.
Well, majority of people, when they think of spiritualism, they think about dead people. Well, with my wife and I, it's always been a way of life, and that really is what religion means, a way of life.
The Spiritualist Religion is based on a set of guiding principles laid down by the medium Emma Harding Britten in 1871. Spiritualists choose which principles are most important to them.
I've lived my life by the fifth principle, which is personal responsibility. I am an adult now, and I know what's wrong and what's right, and I must do the right thing. And there's nobody going to save me from any wrong I do. I must atone for it myself. That has been my big belief, the fifth principle.
Wife and I have been spiritualists for over 90 years, and we have never had what you might call a shimmer or a shake. We're not conscious of being psychic.
The phenomena side of spiritualism doesn't interest me. It's spiritualism as a way of life. I'm not greatly interested in the phenomena at all. It's been the Lyceum that's been my main interest all my life.
The Lyceum,
I must say, that is proper way of being for the Caucasian.
Spiritualist Sunday School, was founded in 1863. It played an important social and educational role in the lives of early spiritualists.
My father and mother met in the Lyceum. I had photographs which showed me as a youngster of 3-year-old when the Lyceum had gone on an outing, and I'm sat there in a little sailor suit. It was a revelation in education. Education in those days was totally different from what it is today. And we used to do various things. We used to do marching and exercise, calisthenics.
In the 1930s, Albert and May Saxon became teachers in the Lyceum.
We didn't just try to make spiritualists of them. We never tried to make spiritualists. We made good citizens. That was my aim. I never tried to make any child under my care a spiritualist. I just wanted the children to grow up good people, good citizens.
During the Second World War, death was no longer confined to the battlefields. Civilians were being bombed in their homes. The Church of England struggled to meet the new fears and the grief of the nation. And the popularity of spiritualism rose once more. While news of the mounting death toll left many feeling helpless, spiritualists sought active ways to deal with the shock and horror of untimely death.
During the war and after the war, we used to hold a circle in our sitting room. And this is what we called a rescue circle. And this was to help spirit people who really didn't realize that they had died. They're catapulted into the spirit world and they don't know where they're at. 1 minute you're a physical body and the next minute you're in the spirit world. They're just confused. Once they were in our circle, then our spirit guides could then help them and show them the way to a better life in the spirit world.
Rescue mediumship, where the medium claims to be rescuing a spirit who is caught between two worlds, if you like. I see that more that they are rescuing the condition and not a spirit. It's like a ghost phenomena. There's a stain left behind of somebody. Somebody dies violently. They don't take that violent death into the spirit world. The physical can suffer, but not the spiritual. So what the rescue work would be is clearing up the stains of this world. So the whole spiritual thing is that people come in and take negativity back out of the world to clear it up again. Anything where people die en masse, anyone going to mediums who have suffered that will get good results because it's the suddenness, it's the massiveness of it. It makes the human mind expand and reach out to try and wonder where they all are. And that is where mediums actually do their best work, because there's such a lot of unfinished business when people die quickly.
In 1943, the warship HMS Barham was torpedoed. That night, Helen Duncan, a much sought-after materialization medium, held a séance at which one of the dead crew apparently passed a message to his family. The Admiralty had yet to disclose the loss of the barroom to the public. And Helen Duncan was arrested. She was charged under the Witchcraft Act of 1735 and sentenced to Holloway Prison for 9 months.
It was a ridiculous carry-on. She was arrested and held in prison for weeks before even being allowed a trial, and then convicted under a ridiculous Witchcraft Act of 17-something or other. It's quite pathetic that in that day and age they should drag up such an old, outdated law.
There was a public outcry, and as a result, in 1951, the Witchcraft Act was replaced by the Fraudulent Mediums Act, which therefore accepted the existence of genuine mediums producing genuine evidence of contact with the dead. The most controversial and elusive of all spiritualist phenomena was ectoplasm. Ectoplasm is the substance allegedly produced by materialization mediums to give the spirits tangible form. The phenomenon was originally reported in the 19th century, but its supposed occurrence became widespread in the 1940s and 50s.
This is a kind of very mysterious substance which seems to be fluid, it seems to be liquid, it's even gaseous, it comes from bodily orifices, and possibly the mind of the medium from whom it's coming, or perhaps even disembodied spirits. And it turns into all kinds of things. It can turn into human forms.
This is the group. My mother's in the middle, my father standing behind, my wife sitting next to my mother.
Tom Harrison's mother, Minnie Harrison, was one of the most renowned materialization mediums of the post-war period. Tom and fellow spiritualist Don Mackenzie have vivid memories of one particular séance that took place nearly 60 years ago.
On the 6th of April 1946, we saw this ectoplasm coming from my mother, from her mouth, down to the floor, and then it made a big disc on the floor. We're all saying, look at that. Look at that ectoplasm, as much ectoplasm. Look at it all building. And it started to build up in a column of white ectoplasm. And I could see there was a face in the top of it. But then 2 hands and arms came from this cylinder, this column, towards me. So I automatically put my hands out, and it turned out to be Aunt Ag, who had passed over to the spirit world in 1942. And she took hold of my hands with hers, which were quite warm, and in this hand, in my right hand, she put 4 carnations, grasped my hands together and said, for you. And I'm sitting there. I think today's phrase is gobsmacked.
Once I'd seen that, there's nothing on earth would ever disprove that life wasn't continuous. That was my total conviction, and I've got that all my life. And it's something I'll always remember.
This is a photograph of the ectoplasm coming out of my mother's mouth. This is where she sat on the chair behind the cabinet curtain. But in this case, the curtain was rolled up so we could take this photograph with infrared photography.
The whole question of ectoplasm, which is supposed to exude from the medium and then build up, there are hundreds of people who claim to have seen it. For example, there's the Harrison Circle, where they simply have a weekend meeting and they would form the ectoplasm, all the rest of it. And not only the people who are still alive would attend, but also the people who are dead. And again, you're hard put to disbelieve it because those people who witness these things are transparently honest people.
But witness testimony and photographic evidence have constantly failed to convince skeptics or meet the demands of science. Psychical researchers have increasingly sought evidence of psychic phenomena which can exist away from the influence of the medium and the séance.
The big problem with spiritualism is are the conditions of the seance. Not everyone can turn up. Not everyone wants to turn up. Not everyone agrees with the conditions. They're too dark. If you want to persuade most scientific audiences, you're going to have to produce records of things outside the walls of the darkened parlours. And these are crucial for persuading sceptical audiences of what's going on.
The next great breakthrough in the quest to find an objective means of proving contact with the dead came in the 1950s. It did happen outside the seance, but it happened by accident.
Friedrich Jürgensen, who was a documentary filmmaker, was making film on birdsong. And to his annoyance, he found that his tapes were interrupted by very faint voices. So he thought he was picking up stray radio transmissions. But when he listened very carefully to the voices, he found that his own name was being mentioned. Some of his work then was subjected to scientific test, and really it was found that there seemed to be something going on here which could not readily be explained by stray radio transmissions, because these could be screened out by scientific means.
The appearance of mysterious voices on tape became known as electronic voice phenomena, or EVP. Hundreds of people are now working in this field, attracted to it not because they're spiritualists, but because they've been convinced by the evidence. Unlike contact made through mediums, this electronic method of trying to record the voices of the dead outside the seance
Proof is in the pudding. The fact that they have to create things to mimic us, our abilities, natural abilities, to do these things. Like I said, all ideas come from us, and nothing's new under the sun.
seems to lend itself to scientific scrutiny.
Over the last particularly 2 decades, but going back even further than that, we're looking at hard science, we're looking at hard evidence, we're looking at results which have been produced under conditions which rule out the 2 main arguments against the reality of these phenomena. One argument is that it's stray radio transmissions, you're simply picking these up and you're misinterpreting them. The other one is fraud. Now, it's not very difficult to set up experiments where you can rule out both stray radio transmissions and you can rule out fraud. And it's only those experiments that really interest me. And there are many of them, and the evidence is very strong and certainly warrants inspection from any scientist who really wants to know what's going on in this field.
To date, those working with EVP have failed to convince the skeptics that their recordings are proof that the dead can communicate.
EVP has been tried now for about 70 years, and they've all seemed to be on the verge of great breakthroughs. I mean, this promises. And the other side, as I said, would have all these great pioneers of radio, etc., and you would think that they themselves, if they were still interested in communicating, would have managed to devise a foolproof electronic method or whatever to do that. But again, it seems to be largely promises.
None of the pioneers of telecommunications who've passed over have made provable contact through electronic or human media. But since those first eerie knockings at Hydesville, the exploration of spiritualist phenomena has expanded the ambitions of science and the boundaries of human knowledge.
The man who pushed not only his own boundaries but also those of his wife, an intimate account of Churchill's forgotten years tomorrow night on BBC Two Scotland at 9. 4 teenage girls in Glasgow have bonded due to common past experiences. They tell their stories in Tales from the Edge. Next.
The largest gathering of forensic experts ever are in a race against time.
All right. I guess that's. Oh, I'm sorry about that. No, let me get this straight. Let me come back. I'm sorry, DOD. I'm sorry. Well, what do you think about that, brother? Was it quite interesting?
Yeah, that's very interesting. And it's like you said, it takes them to build all of these, all this equipment to do,
Yes.
you said we do naturally.
Yes, things we do naturally. And that comes from our ancients of ancients. It's, you know, they started all that. And because we fell into a weak state, and if everything that they're doing was, you know, it's not nothing new, you know. So,
right.
But we just have to know that we're nothing like these people. And I did a video last night. They do not come from us. I can't stand when people say they come from us. Because that's like, look at it this way, DOD. They want to contribute the deep, dark black mother with creating these monsters. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And they skip over all the light-skinned people like myself and a lot of mixed people and mixed Mexicans, mixed Native Americans, mixed, you know, all these mixed people that came from her demise. They were created from her destruction. You had to break down her nature to create these others. And it's a disgrace to me when they say that, you know. It's like giving them something that they don't need. You know what I'm saying? I give them nothing. And, you know, I'm going to do a video tomorrow on energy and how they see our energy. And then Sunday is going to be on the darkness. The dark cloud. Yeah. And to get our people out of this mind frame that this is our reality. It's not our reality. It's a fake world that was created around us full of lies. You know. You have any last words?
No, just that this was a very interesting topic. I hope you touch on it again in the future, because it is interesting. Like I said, I've never seen. Well, there was this one time me and my wife, we were coming with my first wife, back in like the early 2000s, and we were coming home. It was late at night, and it was foggy. And you know, we seen something. We seen what looks like a bodily shape down the road, but we were coming, and we drove through it. And when we looked back, it was still. You know how when you drive through fog, it'll dissipate, or it'll go spread all different ways.
Yeah.
When we drove through this, we could swear it came through the car. Wait, she had an SUV. It went through her SUV and out the back. And when we looked back, it was still the same form. And it didn't change. It didn't dissipate. Nothing. We just looked at each other. Damn.
Yeah.
So I don't know, what it was. Yeah. But I just know that I've never seen anything like that before, since or after.
Yeah. We can sense spirits. We still deal with spirits, but they don't harm us per se.
Yeah.
They make themselves known towards us. We still see we see these other things from other realms. We have that ability too. It's just that, where is our mind at the time? Are we paying attention? Are we in tune to the earth and the universe? Are we in tune at that time? Are we distracted with a lot of other things going on in our lives that are, not realistic things? Because the real things is to be in tune with what is really going on, the truth,
But
And
yeah, if you get the mind to, do this topic again.
okay, we'll definitely do that. Definitely. Yeah. So with that said, true love, real peace, and the higher self within. And thank you again, DOD, for being here and helping out. And
Hey, like Baird, thanks for having me.
tomorrow too. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Talk to you later.
All right, peace.
Peace.